Hello, this is Silas, and this is Big Brother is Not Watching. People are not against being watched. On the contrary, many people rely on being watched. They thrive on it, they seek it out. This begins from even an evolutionary sense. Think about a baby. If you have two children in our evolutionary environment, and one of them is quiet and goes unseen, and the other one always has your attention, which one is more likely to survive? With this selection process, we have been selected to demand attention. If nobody sees you, if nobody hears you, if nobody pays attention to you, that likely meant your death. This has grown from that biological need and, as expected, has been evidenced in our view of the supernatural, in our view of the gods. Think about from the beginning of theologies. I have some ideas of kind of how religion came to be and kind of walk you through some of the thoughts that I have from anecdotal evidence, from observations, from some study into it. When we began with animism, where there was gods of different elements, to even contemporary omniscience of the three Abrahamic deities, this idea of a being able to see things that humans do, the way humans interact with that item itself and between each other, is a very common trope. Think about our early history when you're living in maybe a 10 square kilometer area. You're coming across the same weather patterns, the same trees, the same plants, the same fruits, the same animals, the same rock formations. And these are things that you start noticing that, okay, this particular people in your tribe, in your living area, in your group that know more about this. So it makes sense for you to think they may be actual gods and elementals that actually have some kind of rule over these individual things, just as individual humans know more about those particular things. I think this is where animism comes from. It's not necessarily organized into a pantheon, but it's just general gods and elementals for every single thing that you come across. If you meet something new, you just assume that that thing has a god that you might not know of. Now, next comes polytheism. Polytheism comes from when people understand there's groupings to these things. There's more of a pantheon, as I said before, where it's like, okay, you understand trees, plants, fruits, all these things kind of come together under one. From the largest of trees to the smallest of herbs, you understand that's together. So now they start grouping these together. You understand there's certain cycles, certain things like anger, certain things that emotional things. So that's where you come to things like Poseidon being the god of everything in the water, be it rivers, be it the rains. I think Poseidon was involved with the rains, but be it the oceans. Everything that is water comes under Poseidon. Then you have things like beings like Sekhmet and Anubis who are dealing with the afterlife, which is bundled together into one thing. And then these things also have a pantheon that they're under. Now, from polytheism, as humanity started growing, as we get more of an understanding for these things, now we understood kind of how rocks were formed, so we already understood that. We developed a clear distinction between things that had the possession of life and knowledge and the soul to those that are inanimate. Then we think, okay, maybe there's somebody who created the rock. Now we start understanding, look, we understand how the rocks were created. We understand currents, so we don't think necessarily there's Poseidon doing this. So we start thinking, okay, maybe there's a god with some kind of supernatural that is exterior to us, exterior to our knowledge, exterior to our seeing. So even though that God can't be seen by us, we still know and have that understanding that there were a lot of things in the past that we couldn't see, that we eventually saw and became part of what we knew. So we still maintain this kind of idea to this being. And we say, okay, if one human can know a lot, can lead a lot of people, can be just the supreme leader, the king or the dictator or the emperor in that kind of situation, we also thought that kind of power can be reflected in the gods. And then we got to the point where we have monotheism with gods that are essentially more powerful than we can possibly imagine. This was a lot easier to understand at the time because we would come across people who just had abilities and knowledge about things that we didn't even know exist. So it made complete sense that that's how a god could be. If a human could possess these abilities, then why not the gods that supposedly created these humans? Now, after monotheism, where would you go? I was thinking animism, which is just a massive amount of gods, an unknown number of gods, as many gods as there are things. Then you'd go to polytheism, which was pantheons of gods, gods into sectors, kind of grouping things together. And then you went to monotheism, which, as I said, was just one singular god that had purview over everything that was outside of us. The next step is not atheism, which is a lack of any of these beliefs. It is metheism. This is a situation where the God has become the person. You have become a God unto yourself. So, accepting what I've said there, I'll propose that the most powerful and evident and also dangerous religion or theology under this group of metheism is the state and the statism that comes from that. So, in these different steps, there was always something watching. From the beginning, when our parents watched over us as we grew up, to when we started learning about the different religions and the different theologies we were living under, and whoever was watching us under there, that watching has been there. So as with the illustration on the screen that I'm working on, it's this takeoff it's from the film 1984 that was based on the book by George Orwell. 1984 and other Orwellian themes have been said to be prophetic of the times that we live in, and not quite so. I think that most of the resemblance in the writings of Orwell to the time that we live in today is the fact that when Orwell wrote his book, creating this signature piece for this whole genre, he was writing about the past of the same human race that we were then and still are today. Now, getting back to the main point of this, Big Brother is not watching. The watching isn't the key, it's the brother that is. In many cultures, the eldest son has responsibilities thrust upon them almost from at birth. The birthright comes with responsibilities and expectations, as all rights rightfully do. This is why the one-child policy in China led to fewer female births, as sons are expected to house and care for their parents in the older age, whereas daughters do not have this expectation. This is why the male carried on the name historically. Sons, especially first sons, were the ones to carry on the lineage and often the livelihood of families from Europe to Africa. I think a vestige of that still carries on in the black community slang use of the term brother and son among male friends. People saying something like, "let me son you," often used by somebody to indicate that they're going to instruct someone. At times it's used as something negative, but I mostly see it as something friendly, like an instructive thing. And that goes further to the brother situation where you're sharing information between people that you care for. So boys should grow into men. They are the ones that are expected to man up and set an example. So this has been lost in many places. Many locations in the developed world, kids have lost this valuable masculine quality in their childhood and on to adulthood. Gone are the neighborhoods where kids of different ages would wander around playing together and developing their own hierarchies. I have older males that I grew up with that have a brotherly sort of relationship that are not directly genetically related to me. I feel protective of younger males and females that I know, like they were brothers and sisters of sorts. How many of you have this? And I think the lack of valuable fraternity has let down many people in many different ways. It is understandable that there is now a distrust of having any big brother whatsoever watch you. In the past, it could be one big brother looking over many people that were unrelated, and that was considered a positive thing because when you were out there playing together, this big brother would be somebody you'd come back to maintain some sort of order, some sort of protection, or have some kind of helping environment in your childhood. If you don't have that growing up, it is easy to really be curious about what kind of big brother would be watching. Now you tie this back in with the metheism and the statism. You have a situation where the state has the ability to watch you more than it ever has before. Just as I'm recording what you're seeing on the screen right now, it's a screen capture device that just records what you're seeing. But as you can see, it's a little off because I was just testing it out and I didn't double check to see if it's catching everything that you see. And I think this is very indicative of, or it's very illustrative. It's an illustrative illustration of how Big Brother, in the stance of the state right now, would be at actually watching us. Sure, they can. They have the ability to actually tabulate and get pretty much everything that you're talking about, everything that you're doing on your computer and other devices. But how much do they actually see? What sense can they make out of what they collect? The people doing it themselves, like me, are still learning these programs. They might not be able to even capture everything that you see or make sense of it once they have it. On top of that, there's the time thing. Some things are time sensitive. You think something today, you think something else the next day. What is established on? What do people react on? If you have a more present big brother, someone you can talk to in real time who understands you and you understand them, it's a lot easier to build that relationship and have an effective relationship of having a big brother watching over you in that protective and positive sense. There's also the inverse of this. Big brother, the state, may have unparalleled ability to watch what you do. The gods today may truly be as omniscient as they've ever been. But just as in the past, the way we eventually found out that we knew more than the gods that we thought existed, we today also have the ability to know more about the gods and life than it has ever existed before. We have the ability to keep track of our so-called gods more than has existed in any time in history. We have the ability to keep tabs on them, to keep tabs on each other, to understand ourselves and the world better than we ever have before. We have the ability to have big brothers, to be big brothers, actual big brothers to people in our community, people we care about, people around us, better than we ever have before. So there's this odd dichotomy where you have a situation where there's an unparalleled access to ability to have surveillance, yet you have so many people in situations, in trouble, getting into problems that would probably be solved if somebody just listened to them, if they could just have somebody to talk to. So if you ask me, is Big Brother watching? No, he isn't. But it may be better if he was. So that's the video for today, and I'm going to be doing a few more of these where I sometimes will think of an idea and then create an illustration with it, or I'll have an illustration and want to explain maybe what's happening behind this illustration, and I'll just do a screen capture of it as you saw here. So I figured out how to align or get the right dimensions on the screen capture so the other ones will probably show more of the actual illustration being created. And there's going to be links below to the store where you can get merchandise with these designs and others on them. I think I'm going to enjoy this format going forward and kind of showing people just the process of working on some of these things. Let me know what you guys think about this. And also with the whole question of the Big Brother thing, what do you guys think about it? Have you read 1984? Do you think this is an Orwellian time that we're living in? Are you personally a big brother to somebody in your life? Have you had a positive big brother in your life? Do you think you could be a positive big brother for somebody? Or are there people out there that you think, hey, if they actually had a big brother in their life, a positive big brother, they might benefit from it? So that's it for now. Like, share, and subscribe. Notification bell if you're on YouTube. Links to merchandise below. Buy some stuff, enjoy some stuff, look good in it. Let me know what you think about this format and the material in the video. Till next video, goodbye.